Well, we're all looking forward to it. Christmas rest, all right? After all of the actual Christmas stuff, just somewhere in the midst of it all, at some point, at a given moment, a little bit of rest. Quiet, little half a day or whatever it is, a little moment of Christmas rest. For me, often it has been about 9 p.m. Forgive me if you've heard this before, 9 p.m. on Christmas Day, right? So some people are heading to bed for sure, and some other people who are a bit older are asleep on a sofa in various corners of the room, and things are just quietening down, they're settling down a bit. Maybe call the midwife, maybe a little turkey sandwich, that Toblerone that I keep mentioning, maybe we'll crack that open, a glass of something for about 9 p.m. on Christmas Day. That might be, although with a baby on board perhaps that's not going to happen, but my Christmas rest. I don't know what yours is, where it fits, where you might get that little bit of rest, but whether you will or you won't, or whatever it looks like or feels like in terms of rest, what Christmas does offer to you now, this evening, tonight, is peace. That's what it offers, peace. Well, it hasn't worked, has it, Rich? It hasn't worked. Jesus is meant to be the Prince of Peace, and it's peace on earth, isn't it? It's it's the Christmas cards, isn't it? So many of them have that little thing on them, don't they? Peace on earth. But well, it's not worked, has it? Everywhere we look, everywhere we turn in our lives and in our world, there isn't peace. There's conflict. There's war. There's fighting. Hasn't worked, has it? War is absolutely everywhere, isn't it? Let's take a trip around the departments of a university. I don't know which one we were going to pick, Oxford, Cambridge or Hull maybe, one of the three best in the country, but or whatever the quip was. But let's walk around the departments of a university and explore this. Let's go to the sciences first. Now, admittedly, it's not my area, it's not my zone, but we go to the science departments, and there we see that sciences have been used for tremendous good, and also, throughout history, for terrible evil, for war and death and destruction. Someone has said that for every mile of railway track that is laid down, 100 AK-47s are produced. It's the old Frankenstein story, isn't it? The young scientist goes out to use science to create something that's going to be good for society and ends up creating a monster. That's the science department's good, but also used for terrible evil, war and conflict. Go to the history department. That's my zone, right? The history department will go there. Well, since 1800, more than 37 million people have died directly fighting in wars and conflicts throughout our world. Or go to the geography, or I don't know, whatever it's called these days, colouring in or the global politics department, or whatever the subject is, and look around the world. And we've seen it, haven't we, at war in Europe, in Ukraine and Syria and Israel, and all around the world, conflicts. Everywhere we turn, our own politics is polarised, and we use the expression so often, don't we, the culture wars. The culture wars. We're at war with each other. The most famous and most controversial prize in the world, ironically, is the Nobel Peace Prize. We argue about that one more than any of the others. We fight over it. How ironic. Go to the sociology department now. I wish I'd done that, but didn't do history instead. But let's go to the sociology department, and there we learn how society works. And we also learn through the conflict theories, the critical theories, Marxism and feminism, how so often society breaks down, how it doesn't work. And even there, we argue, don't we, and debate, well, why has it gone wrong? How has it gone wrong? What's gone wrong? And we fall out over that too. go to the economics department, don't know much about it, but look at the history of our use of money throughout the world, and so often it is riven by greed and scams and scandals. And go to the English literature department, finally, and look at some of the greatest titles of Western literature, which are war and peace, crime and punishment, pride and prejudice. Now that's out there, isn't it? That's kind of over uni or whatever, that's kind of over there somewhere, but it's between us as well, isn't it? And Christmas is kind of gives us a heightened understanding of this so often, even with our nearest and dearest. Our family, our friends, those relationships, we fight, we fall out with one another and fail each other in so many different ways. We're often at loggerheads with each other, in conflict with each other. But it's not just out there, and it's not just in our relationships, it's inside as well, isn't it? Actually, our culture is littered with a language of a longing for a peace inside. Have you noticed that? The language we use all the time of wellness and well-being and mindfulness and wholeness and mental health and healing and human flourishing, all of those words, we're longing for peace within, inside of us. In many ways, actually, the biblical understanding of peace is covering all of those things. It's holistic. I'm very conscious right now this evening, there's quite a few people who can't be here because they're not well. People have got bugs. There's a lot of bugs going around at the moment, aren't there? This time last year I headed to the docks, nothing serious, don't make a fuss about it, but I headed to the docks, and the doc sat me down, and we it's chest stuff and all the rest of it, and he said, look, actually what you think here is a symptom, that's actually a cause, right? And if you can sort that out, that's going to help you. That symptom is actually a cause. Sometimes we get those two muddled up, don't we? Symptoms and causes. And it can be similar with this. You know, the symptoms are the conflict, the war, the fighting that we experience, the lack of peace that we experience in our lives and in our world. They are all symptoms. But the great cause behind them is that we are, and we have been, at war with the God who made us. We've been at war with him. That's, if you like, upstream, and then downstream of that comes all of the conflict, war, fighting, and lack of peace in our world that we experience. We're out of kilter with our Creator. And so it's no wonder that we war with one another. We've lived in his world our way. It's very Christmassy, actually, isn't it? God is a good and gracious and generous giver of so many gifts in our lives, just like Christmas. And so often we have enjoyed the gifts and ignored the giver of those gifts. We've ignored him. For many in our culture today, I guess for some folks in our culture, it's that war against God, of that kind of militant new atheism, Richard Dawkins and all of that. But for many people in our culture today and in this room today, actually our war with God is a cold war. We've given God the cold shoulder. We've kind of ignored him through our lives, life's days and life's dilemmas. And life's decisions, big or small, life's decades go by with no real reference to the God who made us. We've been at war with him. We've ignored him. And I think deep down we long for peace, of course, in our world, but also for peace with God. Sometimes we have to get out of our situation in order to see things clearly, don't we? And I guess over the Christmas season that may well happen, right? Everyone just needs to get out, get a bit of fresh air, go for a walk, and just kind of everyone needs to breathe. We all experience that for sure. But sometimes we need to step back from where we are to see what's going on. And it's the same with this idea of peace with God. An African author, the creator of the first autobiography, more than 1,500 years ago, said, our hearts are restless till they find their rest in thee, in God. We will not be at peace, we will not have rest until we find rest with God, peace with him. But you don't have to go back 1,500 years to get that perspective. You go back a few years, actually, not so many years ago. Let's go back to about 2020, the beginnings of the pandemic. This video came out. It's called the UK Blessing. It appeared and it reached and it kind of resonated with millions of people straight away, straight out of the park kind of thing. It resonated, and then a little while later, more millions of people it kind of connected with. People had different opinions about it for sure, including Christians themselves. One politician described this as a sensational singing masterpiece. Right there in the pandemic, all of these different voices, choirs, individuals, instruments were brought together through technology to produce this incredible song. And at the heart of it are some words from the Bible, lots of lyrics, but the main ones are these famous words from the Bible. The Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. You see, there's something in our world, in our culture, in our hearts that just resonates with the idea that God might give us peace. Well, that was just the song, but then, of course, there's the symbol that went alongside it. What was the great symbol of hope in the midst of the pandemic? What did people look to? What was that symbol of hope? Well, of course, it was this, wasn't it? It was those rainbows in windows. I think it began with some school children up in Newcastle. They started painting and drawing pictures of rainbows and putting them up on their windows of their homes. And the school said, let's have a cheerful window campaign. Let's do this. And of course, it got on Facebook and from there quite literally went viral. No pun intended. But it just spread and more people, children, got swept up in this. The late Queen, in a speech that she gave, she encouraged this and endorsed it and encouraged people to put these signs up in their windows as a sign of hope. And it's absolute genius, isn't it? It's absolute genius. What is one of the easiest things for a child to draw, to paint, to colour in? What's one of the earliest things that they learn to draw, colour in, paint? It's a rainbow, isn't it? And so it spread like wildfire throughout the country, and it's of course a sign that's taken from Genesis, from the Hebrew Bible. God has judged the world, and then he places in the sky a rainbow. He puts it there as a sign. Now, the word for rainbow right there is the same word as the word for a bow, right? Bow and arrow. A war bow, a battle bow, it's the same word. There's no distinction between the rainbow and an ordinary bow, a bow used in warfare. Now you tell me, is God's war bow loaded? It's not, is it? The arrow's already gone. It's not there. It's not loaded. Now you tell me, is God's war bow pointed downwards towards the earth, towards this world full of people who have warred against him? Is it pointing downwards? What do you think? No. No, it's pointing upwards, isn't it? God's war bow, God's battle bow, is not pointing down towards the world that has warred against him, but it is pointing upwards towards him. Almost as if God has laid aside his war bow. No, it's more than that, isn't it? As if God has turned his war bow towards himself. He has taken it into himself and onto himself. He has turned his battle bow towards him that he might turn towards us and bring us peace. Peace with him. Now here's the thing. He did. He did. He did. 2,000 years ago, Jesus was born in Bethlehem, yes. And Jesus lived a life of perfect peace, yes, absolutely. And Jesus died on a cross, and there he absorbed the rightful wrath of God for all our rebellion, for all our wrong, for all the ways that we have warred against him. Jesus took it all on the cross. Jesus was punished in our place. He took God's justice and he turned it aside. It's as if God aimed his war bow at his only son, so that we might have peace with him, so that no longer may we be called foes of God, but friends. No longer enemies, but his children. So do you see? Jesus is the Prince of Peace. He is the Prince of Peace. He brings us peace with God, the most important peace that we could possibly have. He brings us peace with God by absorbing all of that enmity, all of God's rightful anger, absorbing it on the cross. And he will be our peace. To us a child is born, to us a son is given. Yes, wonderful counselor. Yes, mighty God. Yes, everlasting Father, but also Prince of Peace. Peace on earth and mercy mild. If you only get that half, think, hang on, there's no peace in our world. But no, peace on earth and mercy mild, God and sinners reconciled. Jesus came so that you could be reconciled with the God who made you, so that you could have peace with the God who made you. Now, children understand this, right? Children can get this. The children here this evening can understand this for themselves. God is not cross with us because Jesus went to the cross for us. The Prince of Peace was pierced so that we can have peace with God. If you like, he walked the path to the cross so that we could be placed and we could walk into the path of peace. Peace with God. You know, there are many things that I want at Christmas time, but there's few things that I need. Few things. We long for peace, don't we? We long for peace inside. We long for peace in our hearts. We long for peace in our minds. We long for peace in our families, in our relationships, in our communities. We long for peace in our world, and rightly so. But back of all of that, before all of that, Jesus Christ comes to you this evening as the Prince of Peace, and he says, I can bring you peace with the God who made you. And from there, many other kinds of peace besides. Now, how do you get hold of that, right? If Jesus is standing there and he's saying to us through the centuries, if he's saying to you this evening, you can be friends with God tonight, you can have peace with God tonight, how do I get that? Like, how, it's available, but how do I get it? Well, it's very simple, and we understand the concept, don't we? Because we're going to be doing a lot of it in the days ahead, right? We're either giving or receiving these, more or less. Might be smaller, might be bigger, who knows? But it's gifts, isn't it? And this offer of peace with God is a gift that God gives to us through his Son Jesus. Well, what do you do with a gift? Well, hopefully you grab hold of it, don't you? You take hold of it and you unwrap it. And if it's any good, you'll treasure it. And you may well treasure it for the rest of your life. And it's the same with Jesus. Here he is offering us peace with God, the greatest gift possible. And what we've got to do is take hold of Jesus. We turn to Jesus. Turn from all of that war with God, all of that conflict, all of that life without God. Turn from that and trust in Jesus for the forgiveness of your sins, for the pardon that you need for all of your offenses against God, for the peace that you long for, that we long for, that I long for. Take hold of it and then treasure him above all things, now and forever. Is that you tonight? Is that you this evening? You come here today, been here before maybe, I don't know, what's going on here, I don't know, I'm not sure about this, but you know in your heart that you lack peace, you're restless. Well, you will be until you find your rest in him. Maybe that's you tonight. Maybe you're watching online or you're here and you know there's something missing. Well, Jesus is there to provide what is lacking and to bring you into that relationship with this great God. Would you take hold of it tonight? Would you unwrap it tonight? Would you unwrap Jesus and treasure him forever and find peace with God? Let his peace fill you now, this evening, this Christmas time, and forever.